Now, if you've turned on the TV, and if you've been listening to any financial news lately, you've been hearing about how the stock market is doing very, very, very well, right? You've heard about how we have great stock results. The economy is doing really, really well. But you'll notice that the people in your neighborhood and your community have not seen their standard of living vastly increase. And you'll notice that the spending power of average Americans is not increasing. And furthermore, if you look into the statistics, you'll notice that household debt is now at record levels. So how is it that the economy can be doing so well, but at the end of the day, your life isn't getting any better? Your spending power isn't increasing, and the U.S. public is actually poorer than they've been in decades. How is this possible? How can we be having a growth in the economy at the same time as people are getting poor? Well, that's because this isn't real growth, and we don't really have a real economy in the United States. What we have is a financialized economy. In the USA, at this point, everyone is tied into the stock market. And the stock market is set in ways that people can continue making money. A certain Wall Street class of investors can continue making money as society gets poorer all around. And this is a big problem. We have a financial elite in the United States that has basically insulated itself from the rest of society. As people across the USA, their wages go down, they get deeper in debt, the standard of living decreases, they've figured out ways to keep making money. And I'm not just talking about derivative ripoffs and bets. I'm also talking about the fact that we have a prison industrial complex, and they're making money off of locking people in prison. I'm talking about the fact that we have, the pharmaceutical ripoff and the opioid epidemic, where people are getting addicted to opioid medications and all of that, and it's a way to make money. I mean, if you look at it, the Wall Street elite has figured out and maneuvered various ways that as the population gets poorer, as the standard of living goes down, as life gets worse for average Americans, they can keep making more money. And that's the problem that we have. This is not real growth. We haven't had real growth in the United States really since the 1950s. During the 1950s, industries in the USA were booming, and at the same time, the stock market was booming, and that was real growth. We haven't had real growth in years. At this point, Wall Street is enriching itself while the population gets poorer and poorer, and they have found many, many different ways of insulating themselves from the actual conditions of society. And at the end of the day, it can't last forever. That's the problem, is eventually there's going to be a crash, because as our spending power decreases, as our wages go down, as the good paying jobs disappear, as even the retail jobs are decreasing, right? They're closing their stores all across the USA. H&M, other stores are shutting down, and these retail jobs that were supposed to replace the industrial jobs of the past, they're even going away. People are shopping on the internet. And as the retail sector declines, as wages decrease, as addiction goes up, as poverty increases, as the spending power of the next generation goes down, ultimately people's spending power is going to have the effect of crashing the economy. People won't be able to buy back the products, and no matter how much insulation they invent, no matter how many schemes they figure out to try and make themselves richer as the population gets poorer, they're ultimately going to have a crash as well. And this is because we don't have a real economy. At the end of the day, we have a financialized economy. Real economies are about steel and iron and oil and natural gas and computers and new technology and innovation and science. That's not what we have in the United States. We've got a rip-off economy. We've got an economy about debt and usury and financialization, and ultimately, this does not create real growth. And if you look at what's happening on the other side of the world, the reason that Russia and China are booming right now is ultimately because they have a real economy. China is making half the steel in the entire world right now. During the 1990s, Russia was in a very bad situation because of the collapse of the Soviet Union, but now they've rebooted their economy, and at this point, they're selling oil and natural gas. They've nationalized and taken public control over oil and natural gas, and they're having a boom. Obama tried to punish Russia by putting sanctions on agricultural products, by not allowing the USA or European Union countries to sell them agricultural products. So what did Russia do? They used the oil and the natural gas money with the state control to plan out and boom and create a boom in their own agriculture. And so now there's a booming amount of farming going on in Russia. They've actually had the biggest grain harvest in the entire history of the country is taking place. If you look at China, the fact that China's lifted 700 million people out of poverty, the fact that so much has gone on, this is because they have an economy that's controlled by the state. in order to have a real economy, at this point you need a government of action. We live by these old adages, the government is best if it governs least, the market takes care of itself, laissez-faire, free markets. This is an illusion, right? I mean, you don't even have to be a Marxist. There's a basic understanding in history that the duty of statecraft and the science of statecraft and the science of leadership is that the government has a duty to oversee the economy and make sure it's working for the benefit of society. And that's what they're doing in Eurasia right now. We don't do that anymore. We let Wall Street run rampant. If they can make money, let them make money, right? Oh, it's free market, let them do whatever they want. Well, society is in ruin. And if you look at what's going on in Eurasia, Russia and China have become superpowers by taking control of their economy, by planning out with scientists and technicians, planning out what goes on in the economy, making decisions based on what's best for society, and having a state that ultimately has the final say, and not just letting Wall Street do whatever they feel like doing, not letting their financial sector and their capitalists just make money at society's expense, right? In China, they have 5-year plans. Russia's economy is centered around oil and natural gas, and the state sector is huge. And that's what's missing. In the USA, we've really drunk the Kool-Aid of this neoliberalism, this free market ideology that basically we just if the government just plays no role, if there's no planning from the state, everything's going to be okay. And that's not the reality. We're living in a situation that is the result of lack of statecraft and lack of leadership. The government has a duty. In almost every civilization in the world, there's an understanding that it is the duty of the government to oversee economic activity. And that's been forgotten, and we are heading for a big disaster in the United States. I mean, just basic services in the USA, like the post office, like public transportation, Amtrak, everything in the USA is falling apart. And this is a lack of real leadership and a lack of statecraft. And that's the problem that we're in. We need a real economy in the United States. And a real economy would ultimately require a government of action, a government that would step in and take direct action in order to ensure the welfare of the population. That would mean nationalizing our oil and natural gas so that as we're having an energy boom and as our natural gas and energy resources, our oil, we're having a boom because of fracking, that would mean that the population would actually benefit from it. A government of action would start building infrastructure, high-speed trains, railway. A government of action would pass Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights and ensure that people had the ability to get health care and be employed, and make sure it was the duty of the government to ensure full employment, which used to be an understanding. Even back in the 50s, there was a widespread understanding that full employment was something the government should strive for. A real economy and real growth would mean taking control of our banking system and making sure that the lending of money was done in the public interest, not just in the interest of profits. Ultimately, if we want to have a real economy in the United States, if we want to experience real growth, we need to take control of our economy. At this point, the economy of the United States is running in chaos. People are making money as the population gets poorer, and ultimately this is going to lead to some big problems down the road. And right now it's leading to big problems. Look at the country. Look at the devastation we're experiencing. We have big problems. We need to prioritize things like education, like research and development and science and technology. And that requires a government of action that'll step in and work on the behalf of the population and not just let Wall Street run rampant. We need a government of action to ensure that we have a real economy in the United States.